Israel planned a hit on Princess Diana. Princess Diana became a threat to the royal family. The driver Henry Paul was working for MI6, working towards a more sinister plot. All these are theories that have been pushed to the side as conspiracy. But what does all the evidence show? Did Prince Charles feel threatened by Princess Diana and her new romantic connection? Why did Diana leave a very dark letter that may be exposing her killer? Today, I'm gonna go through and tell you the most important pieces of evidence from the death of Princess Diana. We'll sift through the recently released secret tapes, to her diary entries, to talking about back in time to the geopolitical stage that was happening in the world, and looking closely at the company she kept around her that may have put a target on her back. And last but not least, we'll go play by play through the last moments before she died, exposing the real players behind her death. If you think these stories are wild, this is just the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg, as I like to say, on the royal family. We drop deep dives into the biggest rabbit holes in history every single week. So smash that like button like it owes you money, hit subscribe, and don't miss the next story that was never supposed to be told. My name is Alessi, and let's get into this video. Before she became the most photographed woman in the world, Diana Spencer was a quiet, soft-spoken nursery school teacher from Norfolk. Born into British aristocracy, she was never quite the outsider people imagine, but she wasn't raised to be royalty per se. At just 19 years old, Diana was thrust into the global spotlight when she was introduced to none other than Prince Charles, heir to the British throne. Prince Charles and Diana met first in November of 1977 at a family gathering. Charles was 29, Diana was 16. Over time, they become romantically linked, and eventually they got engaged in February 1981. This would change her life forever in ways she just simply didn't understand. Overnight, she became a worldwide sensation. Her youth, innocence, and beauty made her an instant celebrity when they announced she was getting married. The wedding was watched by over 750 million people in 1981. To give you context, last year's Super Bowl had 124 million people watching. That's 6 times bigger than today's present-day Super Bowl. But behind the palace walls, Diana quickly learned the reality of royal life. The marriage was rocky from the beginning. Charles maintained his close relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, someone he had been with 11 years earlier before they called it quits, allegedly. Doesn't really look like he gave up on her, but because unfortunately for Diana, Charles' promiscuity led him to get rekindled with Camilla by 1986. But this guy could have been having an affair the entire time as far as we know. In 1989, Diana finally had enough and decided to confront Camilla. Diana attended a birthday party for Camilla's sister, where she found Charles and Camilla alone, together. Diana went straight up to Camilla, and according to Diana's account, being a badass, she said, "I know what's going on between you and Charles, and I just want you to know that." Camilla, surprised, reportedly responded, according to the standard, if that means anything, "You've got everything you've ever wanted. You've got all the men in the world fall in love with you, and you've got 2 beautiful children. What more do you want?" Diana replied, "I want my husband." She further expressed, "I'm sorry I'm in the way, and it must be hell for both of you, but I do know what's going on. Don't treat me like an idiot." After the confrontation, Diana described feeling a mix of anger and relief. In the car ride home, she cried, most likely for being overwhelmed by the past 7 years of pent-up emotions at that point.
We were all upstairs and I was chatting away, and I suddenly noticed that there was no Camilla, no Charles upstairs. So this disturbs me. So I make my way to go downstairs again. I know what I'm going to confront myself. Try and stop me from going downstairs. No, I don't go down there. I'm just going to find my husband. I go downstairs, and there's a very happy little threesome going on downstairs. Camilla, Charles, and some other man who I didn't know, chatting away. So I thought, right, this is your moment. So I went and sat down, joined in the conversation as though we're best friends. And I said, "Camilla, I'd love to have a word with you if possible." And she looked really uncomfortable, put her head down. She said, "Oh yes, fine." I said to the 2 men, "Okay boys, just have a quick word with Camilla, and I'll be up in a minute." And they shot upstairs like chickens with no heads. And I could feel upstairs all hell breaking loose. What is she going to do?
These details really reveal through the tapes Diana made from the author Andrew Moran's book, Diana, Her True Story. The tapes were recorded in the early 1990s and publicly aired in 2004 after her death. providing an intimate glimpse into Diana's personal experiences and emotions during this tumultuous period. Despite her struggles, Diana during this time became a global icon to what that word means. Her fashion choices were imitated. Every move of her was photographed, and her candid demeanor won public affection. Unlike other royals, she wasn't afraid to show emotion. She cried in public, she held hands with AIDS patients at a time when others wouldn't. She walked through minefields and hugged children in war zones. She was this counter image of the royal family that people adored. Her work with the landmine victims and AIDS awareness and homelessness made her more than a celebrity. She was a humanitarian to many people. Celebrities admired her and world leaders wanted to meet her. Yet with fame came relentless press coverage. Paparazzi followed her everywhere, especially in Britain since the laws are way different. Her phone was tapped, her photos sold for millions, and her life became a tabloid fuel. The more she tried to live authentically, the more the system resisted her. For example, here's a video of her on the trip to the Caribbean with a friend, and she is being bombarded with paparazzi. Over time, she began to speak out, carefully at first, and then more boldly. In a now famous 1995 interview with BBC's Martin Bashir, she spoke openly about her struggles, Charles' affair, and her feelings of betrayal, something most people in the royal family would never do. They would keep that tight lid and keep that extremely private. For her, she was vulnerable and she let it out. That interview shattered the illusion of a happy royal marriage and confirmed what many suspected. Diana was alone and she was suffering. Her body language, her soft tone from this interview, it shows someone totally broken from a tragic marriage and the insane amount of publicity of her every move. Still, the world adored her and she was just honest. And for being real, she challenged the entire monarchy. By the mid-1990s, she was finally divorced, independent, and more popular than ever. But that popularity came with danger. Diana herself felt it, and she said so in her own handwriting. August 30th, 1997, Paris. Diana and Dadi Al Fayed, the son of Egyptian billionaire and former owner of Harrods, Mohammed Al Fayed, were staying at the Ritz Hotel. That evening, the couple had dinner at the hotel's private suite, but outside, chaos was brewing. Paparazzi crowded every exit, hungry for a photo of the most famous woman in the world. The plan was simple, but risky. Around midnight, Diana and Dadi would leave through the hotel's rear entrance. They used decoys, one car left from the front to mislead the press, while another black Mercedes S280 quietly slipped out the back. Their driver, Henry Paul, was the hotel's deputy head of security. He wasn't a professional chauffeur. He had been off duty earlier, but returned to drive the car professionally after some drinks. That decision would prove to be fatal. At 12:20 a.m., the Mercedes departed. Dadi sat behind Henry Paul. Diana sat behind the front passenger seat. Bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones took the front. None of the passengers in the back wore seatbelts. As soon as they left, the chase began. At least 10 paparazzi who weren't fooled by the decoys were on motorcycles following closely and weaving through traffic and even running red lights. The car accelerated, reportedly reaching 70 to 80, and some people say 90 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. They sped along the Seine River, approaching the Pont des Larmes. The roads were slick and the tunnel was dim. Just seconds into the tunnel, the car swerved left, clipped a white Fiat Uno that was never officially found, and slammed into the 13th pillar of the underpass. Dadi and Henry Paul were killed instantly. Trevor Rees-Jones, the only one wearing a seatbelt, survived, but suffered massive facial injuries. Diana was still alive. She was critically injured, but conscious. Witnesses recall her whispering, "Oh my God," and asking for help. It took 37 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. Paramedics spent nearly an hour treating Diana on the scene before rushing her to the hospital. She went into cardiac arrest, and despite multiple attempts to revive her, she was pronounced dead at 4 a.m. local time, shocking the world.
The princess, who spent her life in the relentless glare of the public eye, died in a speeding car in Paris, apparently trying to evade pursuing photographers.
Dr. Richard Shepard, a renowned forensic expert, did a breakdown of Diana's death. His close colleague worked the case, and due to growing conspiracy theories, which I'm talking about today, they reopened the case and asked Dr. Shepard to re-examine the bodies 2 years later at that time. He went into detail saying Diana sustained a minor injury in her left lung and a small tear of a blood vessel. Everyone but Diana's bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, wasn't wearing a seatbelt, which he said was the difference between life and death.
I was called in as part of an expert review team. This was a year, 18 months, maybe 2 years later on, this team was put together because the conspiracy theories just went on and on and on. And social media was beginning to develop and it was just getting worse and worse. And it was felt there really, really needed to be a proper investigation into what had happened in the Alma tunnel on that night.
But the crash was just the beginning of the questions. Who was Henry Paul? Henry Paul was more than a driver, and more people looked into his background, the more suspicious things started to appear. Official reports claimed Paul was drunk. Toxicology results showed high blood alcohol levels, 3 times the legal limit. But there were inconsistencies. Security footage from the Ritz, the night that showed Paul walking steadily without any signs of impairment. Witnesses said he was calm and professional, not someone who'd been drinking heavily. Mohammed Al-Fayed, father to Dottie, made a bold claim that Henry Paul was working for British intelligence.
Have murdered my son and Princess Diana. And I put my finger straight to the gangster who ruling the country behind the scene, who is the head of the royal household, Prince Philip.
But another theory emerged, one rooted in espionage. In his 1999 book, Gideon Spies, journalist Gordon Thomas alleged that Henry Paul had ties to Mossad, Israel's secret intelligence agency. Thomas claimed that Paul was on the payroll of multiple intelligence services, including MI6 and Mossad, and was involved in surveillance operations. He reportedly had over 200,000 francs in his bank account, a suspicious amount for a hotel security manager. According to Thomas, who had inside sources who worked Mossad, that Israel saw Dottie as a threat because of his father ties to Egypt, and the relationship in Diana could pose a possible conflict for Israel in the future, implementing the UK. So Mossad was sent to handle the situation. Could Paul have been manipulated or even silenced? That's what some believe. The claim is that he was part of a plot to monitor Diana, and most likely things spiraled out of control. Whether or not he was working for Mossad, Paul's mysterious wealth, lack of clear motive, and the missing Fiat Uno added fuel to the conspiracy. Authorities launched a massive search for this mysterious white Uno. Over 4,000 Fiat Unos were investigated. One stood out, owned by a guy by the name Levan San, a Vietnamese-born man living in Paris. His car had been mysteriously repainted red just days after the crash. He refused to cooperate and no charges were filed. This is a defining moment in this case because this is where the fuel from conspiracy theories holds some water. Mohammed Al-Fayed claimed the Fiat was used in a plot to assassinate Diana. He pointed his fingers at MI6 and even accused French photographer Jean-Paul Anderson, who owned a Fiat and later died in strange circumstances. But official investigations found no solid link. Despite years of inquiry, the driver of the Fiat was never officially found. The car vanished into history, leaving behind only speculation, secrecy, and a lingering question. Who was behind the wheel, and what role did they play in one of the most tragic nights in royal history? The official story never fully explained. These loose ends make me wonder, one of the most famous people on the planet with cameras on her everywhere and people following her everywhere, never could find a white Fiat that had been hit with damage marks in the year 1997 when street cameras were a thing. Maybe it's not the most extreme theory out there, but regardless, very, very strange. In the early 1990s, Diana began secretly recording her thoughts and giving her raw emotions.
It's so ridiculous, I can't even string my words together.
Well, the audio tapes were made with the help of her voice coach, Peter Sedelin. She spoke about her loneliness, her marriage, and her fears. In the tapes, Diana revealed that she tried to harm herself during her darkest days. She said the royal family ignored her pleas for help. She also spoke about Charles' affair with Camilla, how she knew it never ended and how it made her feel disposable and she was just being lied to. Perhaps most chillingly, Diana once wrote in her note, "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury, so he can marry Tiggy." Tiggy was Charles' former nanny. That note was given to her butler, Paul Burrell. He kept it hidden for years. When it came out, the public was shocked. It seemed Diana predicted her own death. The tapes further support her claims of fear of being discarded. Once the affair began, it took until '92 for both of them to finally decide to split officially. That's when Diana's fame skyrocketed, further making her come across more favorable in the media than her ex. In fact, the divorce made the royal family look very bad, and public image is everything to these people.
There is no shortage of experts on the subject of marriage breakdown. I'm sure that they all have at their fingertips the statistics which prove the damage of divorce.
In another recording, Diana described how she was left out of royal briefings and deliberately misformed. She didn't trust the system. These weren't just personal reflections. They seemed to be cries of help and warnings. Why would Diana write something so specific? Was it paranoia or something more? Did Diana have reason to fear Charles? Their marriage had collapsed in full view of the world. He had returned to Camilla, who the royal family had once rejected. Diana's popularity had grown far beyond the monarchy's control. Some say Charles saw her as a liability. There were whispers that Charles wanted to marry Camilla and needed Diana out of the picture. Again, we don't know. The note about Tiggy only deepened the suspicions. Royal insiders, of course, deny these claims. However, her butler claims that Diana was in fear of her life and that these letters were given to him in the case something ever happened. A dead man's switch. He's been ruthlessly scrutinized on the internet, but one thing's for sure, Diana's letter stands out as an eerie testimony. In the years following Diana's death, the conspiracy theories exploded. One major theory suggested MI6 orchestrated the crash. Former MI6 agent Richard Tomlinson testified that plans to assassinate foreign targets in staged car crashes were very real, and that similar tactics have been discussed internally. These tactics, if done correctly, would even fool top forensic experts like Dr. Richard Shepard. The mysterious Fiat Uno, the missing CCTV footage from the tunnel, and the delay in emergency response all added to the public doubt. Others speculated that Diana's relationship with Dadi Al-Fayed was the motive. There were rumors that she was pregnant and planning to marry a Muslim man. Not very liked in that world. Mohammed Al-Fayed publicly claimed this, saying the British establishment couldn't accept an Egyptian stepfather to the future King of England. The 2008 Operation Paget report concluded Diana's death was a tragic accident, but many still don't believe it. Too many questions remain. Dr. Shepard's conclusions on Princess Diana's death points to a more Occam's razor approach. He's examined over hundreds of dead bodies and analyzed all sorts of situations from murdering, unaliving, natural causes, and of course accidents.
It's too late for the people who've died, but it's the start of understanding why they died and what happened and trying to make sure it doesn't happen again.
And he says nothing looked deliberate. So conspiracy theories saying it was targeted, the scene, shows zero evidence of that. Again, this is a well-established forensic expert. In the world of espionage, anything can be made to look like an accident though. Diana was buried on September 6, 1997. Over 2.5 billion people watched the funeral worldwide. Elton John sang "Candle in the Wind." Her brother delivered a harsh eulogy, blaming the press and defending her dignity. The world wept, but even more than grief, there was anger at the media, at the monarchy, and at the unanswered questions. When Diana died, the world erupted in grief, but one person I had yet to mention remained silent: Queen Elizabeth II. In the days following the crash, while millions mourned, the Queen stayed at Balmoral Castle in Scotland with William and Harry, her two kids. Her absence was felt deeply. Newspapers questioned her compassion. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, demanding she acknowledge the tragedy. There were no flags at half-mast, no official statement, nothing. Behind the scenes, however, the Queen believed she was doing the right thing. She wanted to protect the boys, shield them from the press, keep them grounded in routine, but to the public, it looked like indifference. Only after 5 days of mounting public pressure did the Queen return to London. She gave a rare televised address. Her words were careful, composed. She called Diana an exceptional and gifted human being and spoke as a grandmother, not just a monarch. Tactics? Who knows? This moment was pivotal. It calmed the nation on the edge, but it didn't erase years of tension between Diana and the institution. The Queen had never fully understood Diana. She respected her, but didn't relate to her. Diana's emotional openness clashed with royal tradition, and while she supported Diana early in the marriage, the Queen grew frustrated with her later behavior, especially her media interviews and explosive claims. One of the most haunting elements of Diana's legacy are the tapes, recordings. She described confronting the royal family over their treatment of her, and she mentioned that even the Queen, when Diana pleaded for help, told her, "I don't know what you should do." These tapes revealed that Diana believed she had no allies within the palace. She spoke of being undermined or being emotionally manipulated, and of crying for help that was never truly understood. The monarchy, as she saw it, was a machine more interested in optics than people. The royal family too had mixed feelings. Prince Charles was devastated, but his history with Diana haunted him. Prince Philip clashed with her in life, but stood by his grandsons in death. The Queen Mother reportedly saw Diana as a threat to the monarchy's stability due to her insane popularity. And Camilla, the scandalous woman at the center of Diana's pain, stayed hidden from view for years. Even in death, Diana divided the family she had once joined. Her memory became a mirror, reflecting everything the royal family had tried to keep hidden. She changed how we saw royalty and how we talk about mental health and how one person can challenge an empire. And maybe, just maybe, that's why they couldn't let her live. If you think this story was wild, this is just the beginning. We got way more. We drop deep dives every single week into the deepest rabbit holes, so smash that like button like it owes you money. Hit subscribe, tap the bell so you're notified, and make sure that you don't miss the next story that you're not supposed to know. This is Alessi, and I'll see you in the next one.